Rewind-A-Dynamite from the post-wrestling site. AEW, lighting up the fuse. Sit back and enjoy the bubbly as we hear from Jon and Wai Ting. Where we're going, we don't need roads, and if the buck stops here, this thing might blow. Everything you hear are opinions of the show, and if you don't like it, go to the forums and let them know.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Rewind-A-Dynamite. It is Jon Pollock alongside Wai Ting. Hello, Wai.
Hey, Jon. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Processing the last 2 hours, the Fallout and Go Home show, all wrapped into one.
The Fallout and the Fallout from All In and the Go Home show to All Out. Yes,
they had a lot to accomplish in these 2 hours.
Mm-hmm.
We will see how well they did later on in the show. So welcome, everybody that is joining us live here on the Post Wrestling YouTube channel. We will be getting into Dynamite shortly. How was your day, Wai?
Not bad. I went to the X.
How was the X?
Not bad. You know, it was nice. Our first time taking Oscar there, and he's a bit too young to, I would say, appreciate most of it. But got us out of the house. Had some waffle ice cream sandwiches.
You didn't go for any of like the crazy food that they offer there?
Not really. Like, I mean, what's really all that crazy these days, you know?
Oh, they come up with it. It's really not my thing, but they always, every year at the CNE, they come up with just, you know, your food atrocities, and people willfully pay lots of money to eat these things and then Instagram them.
I didn't really see anything that outrageous, like maybe just not all that appetizing. So no, did not do that.
Okay, well, there you go. The Chronicles of Fatherhood, which I've heard private responses from people who want us to continue with this. They said that they would. One person said just talk about.
We've been fact checked apparently by something Jon mentioned about.
Oh yes,
his son.
Yes. I'm always being monitored, even when I'm not aware of it. Well, we have a lot up on the site today. If you want to go check out John Cena and B Detroit, they have a review of last night's edition of NXT as well. Myself and Brandon Thurston were joined by Sean Ross Sapp, a really great show, I thought, today, going over all of the CM Punk story from many different angles. Sean was in London for the show over the weekend as well, so we got his live perspective and reporting from there, and a lot of breakdown. So we will not belabor all of it, but there is more that has come out in the last couple of days that we will get into. But coming up this weekend, or I should say over the next few days, up at postwrestlingcafe.com on Thursday, we're dropping a near 2-hour mailbag show. It is Ask Away. Myself and Wai, we are going to be dusting off the mailbag. We have a lot of questions this month, so we are going to be going through all of them. Some really great questions. And as always, we do our best, from Shawn Michaels in 1998 playing What If to Weezer. We cover it all on this edition of Ask Away.
Some really great questions this month, or these past 3 months, I should say. So looking forward to everybody listening to this one.
Friday night, we're live on the Post Wrestling Cafe at 10 Eastern, immediately after SmackDown. And then we're back at you Saturday and Sunday night after each respective pay-per-view. We'll be live after Payback, live after All Out, and as well, Kate from Montreal and John Cena will have Collision Course this weekend on the Cafe. So plenty to get you through the week and weekend. So sit back and check out all of the great fun that is to come.
Also on Friday, we're going to be dropping something a little bit special. Jon took some time out of his, took a lot of time out of his past week, of course, to write a really, really wonderful write-up of Terry Funk's career. And we recognize not everybody might be, reading on postwrestling.com. You really should be. But some of you guys might prefer to get your information through podcasts. So I forced Jon to sit down on his, very, very busy Tuesday to read this entire thing for your audio listening pleasure. So Forever Hardcore, the story of Terry Funk. Terry Funk. I'm getting ahead of myself, of course. The story of Terry Funk, as written and read by Jon Pollock. That'll be coming out on the free feed on Friday.
This is the closest you're ever going to get to a book on tape from me.
I mean, it's 53 minutes long. It's pretty much an audiobook.
I knew it was going to be a lengthy one, but there you go. If you don't want to sit down and read for all that time, you can simply
Or
listen
read
to
along, like look
do
at
both.
the words
Yeah, do both.
and listen to John read it out loud to you.
You could scroll down while I'm reading it for you, and you could just have the words. It's like subtitles
Exactly.
being read out for you. All right. So Wai, since we last left off with the CM Punk saga, should we call it a saga? Has this reached the level of saga?
I hate to label
I think it's
that.
graduated from incident. Sunday, it was appropriate to call it incident. I think now it is a saga. I don't like drama. Drama just is the catch-all for everything, like the CM Punk drama. I like saga, but I'm open to suggestions.
You're talking about just the Jack Perry thing being a saga, or CM Punk in general?
Everything since Sunday encapsulated.
Okay. I don't know if it's saga worthy. I mean,
Not
it really
yet,
was
no.
just one incident. I mean, certainly the conversation maybe feels like it's a saga, but I really don't think it's.
But there's been many elements to this story, from travel woes to food orders. I mean, it does. It's saga worthy to me, but we will see. So it is of the belief that Punk and Jack Perry have been suspended. That has been reported by multiple outlets at this point, with the addition that it sounds like CM Punk was not notified himself by AEW, but was notified through his lawyer. Pro Wrestling Torch has also reported some kind of confrontation involving CM Punk and Tony Khan in front of others, and then in the locker room in what has been characterized as a heated, intense manner. And at one point, according to 3 sources who have heard about the situation, told Khan he quit and chewed out Khan with harsh phrasing, which apparently was pre-Jack Perry. That's coming from the Pro Wrestling Torch side.
Hold on a second. So that happened before the Jack Perry incident?
That was my understanding of the timeline.
Okay, so he would be, I guess, chewing him out for something unrelated, completely
unknown. Yeah,
okay.
I mean, whatever the issue was, if accurate. So we fast forward to tonight, and there is no mention of anything. There is no Tony Khan off the top like we saw in Buffalo last year after All Out. Not a mention of him. Now, I suspect he was never scheduled to be here tonight because he's being honored tonight at the Cauliflower Alley Club in Las Vegas. For Saturday, yes, he still does commentary for CFFC, and they are doing cards on Friday and Saturday night. However, Punk is right there on the advertising on the site for Saturday, and I have a hard time imagining they would have this would have been a CFFC card that they would have given him the night off to do. So I would think that was the intention, was he would be there for the United Center shows and not tonight on Dynamite. But there was no mention of that. So we are going into Saturday, and you're of the impression that he's suspended. There were no angles shot. There was no reference to him in any way. I guess you're coming out of this. I think if you're following the story, you would not be expecting him on this pay-per-view, but they did not make that clear. And I think that there are enough fans out there that are in Chicago that are leaving this show, at least with it is not clear what his status is. And I'm sure there's some that, if they're not following the story, would absolutely assume that they're going to be seeing CM Punk if they buy this pay-per-view or buy a ticket to one of the shows on the weekend.
I'd agree with both those things, and I'm sure at this point they probably will be too. Clearly, perhaps they either don't know what they're intending to do with CM Punk and All Out right now, or they simply feel like announcing it on their show is potentially just, bad PR that, they'd rather risk not having versus not announcing it and maybe disappointing certain sections of the audience who might be expecting.
I'm not trying to diminish the complicated nature of this, where it would just simply be, oh, why couldn't you just state something? I understand there is probably a nightmare of headaches that are going on here. Sean Ross Sapp had reported that it seemed like the likely scenario was Punk against Ricky Starks for Sunday. And I would think that even though that's a collision program, I would think you would want that known tonight, even if Punk was not there, just as opposed to having several days of promotion rather than the night before for what would be the biggest match on that card on Sunday with CM Punk in Chicago. And you can watch this and maybe their thought is that they are trying to find a solution to this and there might be a way to have him on there. But I do feel to a degree you have to be somewhat upfront with your audience, especially like your paying audience, that he's still like, if you go to the AEW site, like Punk's image is still there attached to these shows, and you are in the business of promotion. And I also see the other side, that if they come out and state Punk is off the shows this week, you do risk that Chicago crowd this week turning on your shows, and we are just bombarded with CM Punk chants throughout the week, including the pay-per-view. So there's not an easy answer to all of this, but they opted just to completely avoid it. And Tony Khan is now going to be doing this media call on Thursday. And you have to imagine, I'm sure off the top, he's going to state maybe a line or something, but I think you have to do a lot more than just, we're investigating this, and until we learn more, we can't state anything about it. It's like, listen, you're asking people to spend money on this show. This is not just a mid-card guy. This is not just a part of the show. You booked the United Center because of this guy. I don't think these shows are happening at the United Center without this guy. And I think at some point you just have to state he's either on the show or he's off the show. And are we just going to be playing this game right up until showtime on Sunday?
I have to hope that tomorrow's, media call will probably shed some clarity, maybe, under perhaps a smaller, like, broadcasting platform, like a media call. He can let out that truth or whatever information or whatever decision he makes out there, and maybe not risk maybe greater sort of like online discourse if he had, for instance, announced it on Dynamite. And then maybe from that point on, maybe you begin an online campaign and then really confirm it to the masses on Collision. I can't really
you're going to run that risk of, like, there will be CM Punk chants, I think, at these shows if he is not on them.
Did you think that there would be tonight?
Yeah, there might have been. I mean, if they had stated it, I mean, there's ways you could have delivered this message. But I mean, if this, whatever the form is that you state this guy is not on the pay-per-view, that's going to reach that audience. And it's like, it's just, there's no way to avoid it. This is going to be like Ric Flair leaving for WWF when they did that Great American Bash show, and throughout the shows in 91 of the "We Want Flair" chants. I just don't know. Like, this is an audience that is just going to view the company as the company is withholding our hometown hero. And that's how it's going to be.
But we're talking about a pretty savvy audience that probably completely understands why. And I'm really even curious at this point if Chicago Punk diehard fans even have like, what would be, I mean, if they want to chant CM Punk, let them chant CM Punk, what's really the big harm in that?
I mean, maybe that's just you just have to bite the bullet. Like, this is, the crowd will react how they're going to react, and it's not the end of the world if we get a crowd that is, that's part of having a live audience, is that you cannot control what they're going to chant. And maybe that should not be the biggest concern about all this. There's not having a CM Punk for the immediate future and maybe longer. There are larger problems than that. Like, we haven't even discussed the fact that this Saturday, this is our second Collision show against a WWE event. That, I mean, we saw what SummerSlam did. Payback is not that level of competition, but nonetheless, like, that's already you're facing stiff competition. And now we're looking at potentially Punk off that show. And I think we're going into a pay-per-view that's certainly, I mean, tonight, it just feels like this audience is not ready for a pay-per-view so quickly. Yeah.
We do have a pretty full card, maybe missing one or two matches, but I mean, if this is the card, yes, they did give us the matches, but probably not that inspiring. At least that's
would Punk and Starks change your opinion?
I think it would add something, having either of the world titles being defended, I think would have added something. Obviously, CM Punk attached to any show is going to add a whole lot of star power. Anyway, we'll talk about the card. I'm sure
we'll get into that as well. But that is the latest. I do recommend people check out the chat we did with Sean Ross Sapp today, because I really enjoyed it quite a lot, and going into many different angles from the whole story. So yes, Tony Khan is doing a media call. That will be Thursday at 2 p.m. Eastern time. And we mentioned the Cauliflower Alley Club, and their ceremony is going on tonight. And beyond CM Punk, who is receiving the Iron Mike Mazurki Award, we have Ron Simmons, who will be receiving the Luthez Art Abrams Award. Mickey James is going to be honored. The Nasty Boys receiving the Tag Team Award. Cool. What a series of speeches we have tonight.
I know.
I wonder if the CM Punk speech will make it online.
Depends what he says, I guess.
I guess so. Others being honored: Coco Beware, Damian CCC's, Joe Malenko, Killer Carl Cox posthumously, Rhea Von Slashers getting the Independent Wrestling Award, Kevin Jeffries getting the Charlie Smith Referee Award, Al Burke, Koji Miyamoto, and then they always give out the Courage Award, which is just kind of on the fly. They surprise somebody with the announcement. But if you've never been to Cauliflower Alley Club, I always say I highly recommend going. I had the chance to go twice. I would love to go back there someday because it's a really great time, to very relaxed setting, and so many people that you get to interact with and see. And a lot of like this kind of a ceremony, it's such a laid back feel, and it's not like you're taping this for television and people are under time limits or anything. It's just, it's a very cool setting and so much history attached to this. And it's a really worthwhile organization that, you know, tries to help out a lot of people in the industry. So when a CM Punk comes to do this, and it sounds like, you know, he could not have been more personable with all the people on Tuesday that he was there around, taking pictures, hanging out with fans. But a CM Punk coming to do this, it does put a big spotlight on something like Cauliflower Alley. And I think it's really cool that he went and did this, accepted this in person.
Especially this week.
On a Wednesday night. Yeah. Like I'm sure he committed to this like weeks, if not months ago, to come on a Wednesday to receive this award. All right. A PFL story, which, I mean, certainly it will have its connection to a story that always comes up with WWE. And this revolves around the Professional Fighters League, the PFL, which has sold a minority stake in its company to a company that has been launched called SRJ Sports Investments, which was launched through Saudi Arabia's Public Investment Fund. The stake is, it's a minority stake in the company that it's believed to be about $100 million of infusion in cash. So this is Saudi Arabia getting into mixed martial arts in a formal way. This will see the launch of PFL MENA for the Middle Eastern, North African region with a league. And it seems that Saudi Arabia will be heavily helping PFL expand its pay-per-views that would be staged in Saudi Arabia for their big Super League cards, which would be their big pay-per-views. And that you have attached Francis Ngannou, Jake Paul, Kayla Harrison. Those are sort of your pay-per-view attractions. And it is interesting to see the discourse about this, that, you know, a lot of outlets that are looking at this and the problems of the Saudi Arabian government. But this is also something that, you know, Francis Ngannou, he's having this huge fight with Tyson Fury in Saudi Arabia in October. But this is just like WWE was one avenue, and we're seeing this, I mean, very heavily and prevalent in soccer, but in combat sports now, like we've seen Saudi Arabia get involved in boxing and MMA. It was only a matter of time.
Certainly. Yeah. I mean, have there been discussions about them trying to get any sort of ownership of the UFC in the past, and is this sort of a backup?
Well, I mean, the UFC does have its relationship with Abu Dhabi. Flash Entertainment used to have a 10% ownership stake in the UFC, which was then bought out by Endeavor. But that seems to be like they will not be in business with Saudi Arabia. You also have Ari Emanuel, who, I mean, famously gave all that money back after the Jamal Khashoggi murder. Although if you've listened to him in recent interviews, it seems like he has very much softened his stance on Saudi Arabia in the years.
He'll be working with Saudi after.
He will be, yes. PCO. Like that's 100% through the WWE deal. So I mean that right there, I mean that would be, you know, that's like you can't just cut off a pipeline like that, regardless of what your moral standing might be. But anyway, it's a very significant story in mixed martial arts, with the PFL getting a big injection of money, and many people looking at the PFL as the likely ones to purchase Bellator, and what that's going to mean for the MMA industry, and what it means for Bellator ultimately if it's just absorbed, pending that being accurate and coming out as it is. Some TV numbers for everybody to look at over the past couple of nights. We have Raw on Monday night, which was up 5% this week. They did 1,677,000 viewers and a 0.51 in the demo. The second most watched quarter and the highest in 18 to 49 was the ending of Chad Gable and Ludwig Kaiser. So obviously, and that also coincided with the start of Seth Rollins promo. So that was also in there, but interesting to see that perform as well at that portion of the show. NXT on Tuesday did 614,000 viewers. So that was down 15% and a 0.16 in the demo. This is down from last week's Heatwave special, but this was the lowest NXT viewership since July the 4th. And it was female viewers that were down a huge amount. I looked at this. Women 18 to 49, they did 43,000 viewers, which is the lowest amount NXT has done since August of 2022. So a whole year since they have done such a low figure for women in the key demo. But women were also down in 18 to 34 and 35 to 49 in pretty significant numbers as well. So I guess the curiosity over was there any curiosity on NXT? There was a steel cage match. There was the women's four-way.
Who's gonna win?
I always associate curiosity with NXT because it feels like every week they're revealing something hidden. The Street Profits showed up unannounced, and maybe that they didn't really announce any main roster people, even though there were appearances by Dominic and Rhea and the Street Profits, but none of that was advertised, and maybe that's also a signal. Like a lot of these numbers, they've been helped by this steady flow of advertised main roster talent from. And getting that Raw bump as well. All right. Those are all your television numbers. The last thing I wanted to note here is that Impact, are you aware, Wai, that they are about to have their 1,000th episode on September the 9th in White Plains, New York? The city you always associate with TNA is White Plains, New York.
Maybe they booked it and then just realized, 1,000 episodes.
Someone
John Cena.
John Cena might have been on Cage Match and realized it was episode 1000. Maybe he let them know. So they are building this up as a really big card. They have announced so far Alex Shelley against Trey Miguel for the Impact title, Ultimate X, a Feast or Fired match.
Ooh.
The good old Feast or Fired match. Frankie Kazarian and Tracy Brooks, husband and wife battle here against Eddie Edwards and Alicia Edwards. The reunion of Team 3D, Bubba and Devon together against a team to be announced. And then they have also announced Gail Kim and Awesome Kong are going to team up, and Gail Kim is challenging any knockouts from the past to show up to either stand beside them or against them.
Interesting. Okay. I mean, the fact that she's opening that up suggests to me that they'll probably be working with them, and then other people will be against them. So,
yeah, I think they've also announced the beautiful people for this show, but it seems like this is going to be Impact's version of your Raw reunion of some sort, like all names from the past that you can bring out to this show. So that's coming up on September the 9th.
Sounds cool.
White Plains, New York. Yeah, I mean, it's like I'm very interested to see if like Impact can build up like a television show and really get a boost for it. It's, it's a very good, consistent show, but can they really build up a buzz? And this is probably their best chance to do it for an episode of television.
Yeah. I wonder what other names will drop by.
Oh boy.
Take your pick from TNA's history. Wow.
Gunner.
I think he's retired. Is he not?
Yeah, I guess not. I guess so. Okay. That is all your news. You can go to postwrestling.com for all of the latest. And of course, this weekend, we will have you covered for all of the pay-per-view festivities. And then, of course, we will be live immediately after here on the Post YouTube channel. But into Dynamite we go from the Now Arena in Hoffman Estates, Illinois. Last number from WrestleTix as of earlier today was 3,569. And to compare that, last year they did all 3 nights at the Now Arena. They didn't run the United Center. The Dynamite that week, the first night of 3, they drew 6,300. So that is the comparison. Well down from last year and night 1. But they start off the show, lots of highlights of All In. I actually think they didn't air enough of these video packages of like this huge crowd, because the way they started it, I thought the video package was great. It just made AEW feel so huge, and I would have used every excuse possible, like coming back from break of like WWE does for a big show and just show that crowd as many times as you can on television, because it made your product look so major league.
You're probably right, and I think hopefully throughout the rest of their history, they'll be using this incredible footage of all their roster members, just whenever they can. But I mean, we also kind of know AEW to not necessarily be formatted like that, coming back from break and going to a bunch of video packages. I mean, they have other video packages to tell their other stories with.
So going into tonight's show, they had announced Orange Cassidy against Penta and Adam Cole speaks. Was there anything else announced? I don't think anything else had been announced ahead of time.
I believe certain things were announced like in the few hours before the show. Like I think the Yuta Kingston match might have been that.
Okay.
But beyond that, really not much prior, like yesterday.
Well, we start off with Jon Moxley against Komander, with Alex Abrahantes scouting in the corner. And early on, Moxley is sent to the floor and Komander hits a big high cross. And then they're fighting on the turnbuckle. And it looked like Moxley was ready to eat a headbutt and just like fell off the turnbuckle to get into position. And there's a twisting splash onto Moxley. And we go through the picture-in-picture. Komander goes to counter a powerbomb into a facebuster like Billy Kidman would do, but wasn't really timed well. And he still took a hell of a powerbomb here, even in countering it. Komander then goes after the knee and then gets a lung blower in and does the rope walk into a 450, landing on the knees. Moxley with the pile driver, elbows, rear naked sleeper, as they're calling it, the rear naked sleeper. And when that doesn't work, boom, to the arm bar and submits him in 8 minutes and 47 seconds. I thought personally, like, Komander was really off here. And I found this to be like a below par Jon Moxley television match.
If par is pretty high, I suppose, I thought it was just a pretty standard, like, heat up your challenger ahead of the pay-per-view type of match. Not necessarily one that I think you'd be talking about in terms of like, must-see Komander matches, nor must-see Jon Moxley matches. So in that respect, sure, might be below their standard.
There was a video on Orange Cassidy. He doesn't know the number of title defenses he's had, but he's going to keep defending it. And he's not taking a break after All In. And he's not the same Orange Cassidy from 4 years ago. And he's going to show Jon Moxley why. And Excalibur notes that the Cassidy match will be the main event tonight. And I would say Orange Cassidy was kind of the star of the show.
Very much so, yes.
Then we go for the first of several locker room post-match comments from All In. The Young Bucks are reeling from their loss to FTR. And FTR come in and essentially they state, we put our hands out. What was the deal with that? And Matt's explaining tonight was supposed to be our big night. And essentially it was a big misunderstanding. He says it's been chaos backstage all day. We're sorry. We're sorry, Dax and Cash. So they get up and then the Bullet Club Gold enter. And we've got the Guns with Jay White and Juice Robinson, and they're making fun of all of them, calling this the winner's locker room. So the Young Bucks should leave. And all of this leads to a challenge issued. There's 4 of them and 4 of you. So we are going to have an 8-man tag at All Out.
Yeah, it's an 8-man tag. Why are you smirking?
Because it's like, listen, I'll be a broken record throughout this show. I think Sunday will be a really the matches will be very good, but man, I just found a lot of this setup to be number one. You're cutting out any chance for anticipation because there's no time to anticipate any of this. So you're just pretty much, this was a lot of throwing matches together. And in most cases, like, you're coming off this gigantic show. So you're not equaling what you just paid for. You're coming up with like sort of rebound matches that feel below what you just paid for, but you're being asked to pay the same amount for this on Sunday.
Right. If either of the two didn't exist, if All In didn't exist and All Out did, or if All Out didn't exist and All In did, you probably wouldn't have had any of these multi-man matches. As it exists, it almost feels like, we're kind of splitting maybe the valuable matches on between the two cards and then filling the rest out with multi-person matches. Now, you do get the sense this is everything, of course, is being done to tell a larger narrative, and whether if that's the Bucks continuing something with FTR, because otherwise, why wouldn't they have just done the handshake in the ring at All In? Or if they're trying to tell a bigger story with Bullet Club Gold and the Elite, that we'll probably get our next chapter there. But this is certainly not a pivotal, like, culminating match whatsoever. It's the type of thing that'll get you to the next destination so that you can eventually get to your climax.
They recap Saraya winning the women's title, and Renee is with Toni Storm, who is happy for Saraya, but she went off script and forgot her part, and it affected my performance. She can't trust Saraya. She can't trust Ruby Soho. She thinks Paul Turner should be sacked, and she just yells off camera, "I can't trust anyone. I can't even trust these shoes," and throws them at Renee. I enjoy this version of Toni Storm. I think it's great. The only thing that would have been better is if she had a championship and was having a celebration after thinking she won it on Sunday.
Yeah, she's been great at, like, trying new things and honing in on whatever this character is supposed to be. And I don't recall, like, necessarily seeing this type of promo on Dynamite before. So, now it's really not just exposed, but I think widely accepted by the masses. So, it's great to see her be able to find a new, like, idea and a new character.
Chris Jericho is out, and he is, selling the loss to Will Ospreay. He's looking all down, and he's getting some applause from the crowd, and he puts over the magic of All In, one of the best weekends of his career, performing in front of Fozzie's biggest audience on Friday, and then over 81,000 tickets sold. And that's a shoot, baby. And he does want to forget how he treated Sammy Guevara after the loss to Ospreay. So he asks Sammy to come out, and he tells Sammy he was frustrated. He didn't know if Sammy had done enough to help him win, but then he watched the tape back. He saw Sammy use the bat, and he thanks him. He offers his hand. Sammy says, "I've always got your back, and a little push isn't going to break us up." So Jericho then says that he was replaying the match in his head, questioning what he could have done differently, and maybe Sammy could have hit Will with the bat just a little bit harder. And Sammy says, "Wait a minute, repeat that." And this crowd starts chanting, "You fucked up." I assumed it's Sammy, but I guess it could have been, so didn't exactly have the sympathy of the crowd here. Sammy says, "Well, maybe you could have hit him harder with the Judas effect." And there you just go back and forth. He says, sometimes he tells Sammy to do something, and it just doesn't happen like I envision it. And Sammy brings up the fact he left his pregnant wife in Orlando to fly over to London to help him out. And Jericho notes how there's plenty of guys in that AEW locker room who would have loved to have been on that show. Sammy says, "Yeah, it would have been nice if I could have wrestled it All In." And Jericho says, "If you follow my advice for the next year, maybe you can be on the card next year." And Sammy says, "Well, I'm also going to learn from you how not to lose on the biggest card in history." And then Jericho brings up his loss in the four-way at Double or Nothing. And Guevara brings up how Jericho won the title in this very arena at All Out 2019. But then the very next night, you lost the belt outside of a steakhouse, which I don't know how much of a deep cut that is for maybe newer fans out there, but I figure enough people know that story. It is a long time ago that happened.
I mean, this is nothing new in AEW. I mean, this is a show built off of a YouTube show.
Well, Jericho says, let's try and put all this behind us, given our history, and let's reunite the Sex Gods and try to become the tag champions. And because this segment, I'm like, okay, it's either going to be these two against each other at All Out. And then when they go this way, I'm like, oh, okay, they're going to team up at All Out. So we're going to start our run for the tag titles next week on Dynamite. And they hug. And we spent like 10 minutes building up this segment for Dynamite next week.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of time for a non-pay-per-view segment at the end of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Surprised me that Jericho won't be on the pay-per-view, and that you wouldn't do even something like this, nor like anything attached to Callis and Jericho. It seems like that's done now. Callis and Jericho, no continued. Well, actually, you had a bit of Callis.
There was a segment later, so at least there's some connection there.
Yeah, but it doesn't seem like Jericho is doing anything at All Out at the moment. You know, you do have to build things for the future and next week on Dynamite, but should it have come at the expense of, you know, this amount of time on a
This is a
show?
long segment.
And it wasn't really that good, I have to say. You know, the constant sort of teasing of like, you know, is he going to turn? I think that's being done so much better in so many other places right now that I'm sure audiences' standards for it are pretty high. And at this point,
What is
I don't
he
even know if
turning?
there's that much interest
Okay.
in like seeing Sammy turn on Jericho or vice versa, you know?
Okay, because I'm talking about Jericho, who, like, he was a heel up until this Don Callis stuff.
Mhm.
And then the tease was he was going to be a worse heel with Don Callis. Didn't. So I guess that he was a babyface. And then
Except at Wembley, but you know, that was a one night
where he was a heel at Rev Pro and then went into, yeah.
He was a heel at Wembley too, but it doesn't matter. That's almost like Bizarro World, right?
So right now he is either going to attack Sammy and we view him in, like, what are we viewing Jericho as right now?
It could be Sammy attacking Jericho.
It could be. You could do that.
Yeah. I get the sense he's supposed to be a babyface right now.
Okay.
But I mean, bottom line, does he have a hot program coming up? And clearly they're building to Sammy versus Chris Jericho at some point. And maybe they're going to
Is that the name of the pay-per-view at some point?
Yeah, that's the pay-per-view in December he's about to announce. Wrestle Dream, I don't know, whatever. They'll team up for a period and then they'll continue to tease whether or not one person will tease onto the you know, on the other. So maybe this just replaces, you know, Adam Cole and MJF and whether or not they can get along for this period.
BCC is in the back and Jon Moxley says everyone has a title, everyone has a catchphrase, but BCC are not about having a bark. And the wrestler that leaves Chicago with the international title will be the wrestler with the biggest bite.
Yeah.
Very a dog. I don't know. There was
a lot of dog lovers in wrestling.
Yeah, there really are. So that was the backdrop for this. Eddie Kingston and Wheeler Yuta. This was a very good match. It was Eddie Kingston comes out, his forehead is bandaged up from Stadium Stampede, but Yuta removes it, and Kingston sends him to the floor, and Kingston hits a tope suicida, and that was quite the visual. And he's selling his arm, which they note will affect the Hurricane. And he hits the big chops in the corner, exploder, and then Kingston is attacking with chops. When Yuta elbows the injured arm, Kingston catches him with the half and half, lands the Hurricane, which Yuta staggers up from, and then he hits him with a second one, and the dude just plunges backward and is pinned in 8 minutes and 48 seconds. So unlike Orange Cassidy, he has his healing properties are very strong within a match. So but he needed 2 of them. They did mention that. So there was that you know, instead of just the one. But I like this match, and they noted this was his first defense of the Strong Openweight Championship.
Oh, is that true? I'm trying to think. Yeah, wow. Interesting.
He won it right before the G1, so he's had no chance to defend it yet. So
yeah, of course, he's had plenty of matches, but I guess no defenses yet. So
yeah, it might be a record for amount of singles matches since winning a title without a defense.
Could be. I thought you did a really good job here, you know, like even as I would say a pretty undersized.
I thought you were complimenting my recap. I heard you did a good job. You said you.
Well, you did you did a great job, John. You know, and
I just recapped the 8-minute match.
Well, that goes without saying. You always do a great job, but I also think
I hear what I want to hear. That's clearly that's my vanity coming up.
Yuta did a very good job, I think, you know, despite being essentially a cruiserweight against the heavyweight, still playing, I think, a pretty effective heel, targeting the body part here. So just an update, they did announce a match after Dynamite went off the air. Tony Khan announced Eddie Kingston and Katsuyori Shibata taking on Claudio and Wheeler Yuta at All Out. So
okay,
team match for you.
Yeah, because Claudio comes out here and he just walks ringside and he won't make any eye contact with Eddie Kingston. He lifts up Yuta and takes him to the back. Obviously, Claudio and Eddie, people have suggested that for Arthur Ashe Stadium, and that would be a good setting for it because it felt as though they would not be rushing to that for this Sunday. So
do we have an ROH show coming up?
What's the next one? Not a pay-per-view. Like they don't have another one till Final Battle unless they add something.
Gotcha. Okay.
There were highlights of MJF and Adam Cole, and we go back to the locker room, and MJF is icing his neck, telling Adam Cole that you almost broke my neck 6 times. And we learn that there is going to be wait for it, a battle royal on Rampage, and the winners of the battle royal will challenge Adam Cole and MJF for the ROH tag titles at All Out. Then there's going to be a tournament, an AEW tournament, and the winner of that tournament will get to challenge MJF for the AEW title at Grand Slam on September 20th, as MJF looked into the camera and reminded us plenty of tickets still available for Arthur Ashe Stadium.
I don't really get so bent out of shape about there being a lot of battle royals and tournaments. I mean, in a program that is still trying to hold on to some semblance of, I guess, some sort of sporting simulation, when you don't have a number one contenders ranking system anymore, the most you're going to get is something like this, to be able to shove and tell to the audience, this is the number one contender.
Where I would get bent out of shape is when you spend a 10-minute segment building up a tag match of which the challengers are not even in this battle royal.
Well, yeah, I mean, you have to establish yourself as a tag team first, don't you? And I mean, they have.
No, I'm talking about the Kingdom later.
Oh, you're not talking about Les Sex Gods.
No, that part's fine. But the fact is, they spent 10 minutes here building up the Kingdom against Adam Cole and MJF. And this, to me, they would be the most obvious team that at least
not
has
in this
some
graphic?
story. They're not in the turn. And I will take all this back if we read the spoilers and the Kingdom end up running into this and winning it, which would make sense. But the teams are the Hardys, Angelo Parker and Matt Menard, Aussie Open, Khan and Toa, Vincent and Dutch, the Best Friends, Darius Martin and Action Andretti, the Outrunners, and Ryan Nemeth and Peter Avalon. Which I don't think Ryan Nemeth is probably.
They're just bodies, right?
Winning this one. So this seems like the Hardys are your only viable option here. Yep. Maybe the Best Friends, but the Kingdom would be like, you have a story there. Like, that was the only thing they pushed tonight as the Kingdom against MJF and Cole.
I mean, I do sense that's more of a long-term program that they're probably not going to burn, on 6
Why are we having a pay-per-view on Sunday?
That's a great question. I think for
like, all I'm hearing is that we have all these big matches, but can't just put them on 1 week after. Well,
again,
I didn't book this.
This is what you're gonna get, dude. Like, I mean, clearly, like, I think
you should have big matches on a pay-per-view.
I'm very curious to know next year if anything is different, because this is the first time he's had to handle 2 pay-per-views in back-to-back weekends. Next week, will he be able to pace the juggling a little bit better? Will he be able to, set up your let's say it's the Hardys. I haven't read spoilers yet, but would he have been able to set up the Hardys that much more in the weeks leading up to it, so that by the time you get from All In to All Out, you have an automatic story for the challengers? But yeah, I would suggest that this year has been a failure.
Yeah, I mean, for as great as the first week was with All In, I like, this does not.
I don't think the build was great for All In either.
Well, I think it was a hell of a lot bigger than this. So there are the teams for the Battle Royal, and then Renee interviews Sammy Guevara and gets interrupted by Don Callis, who's trying to get Sammy Guevara's ear, and says it's hard being Jericho's friend, calls Jericho a sociopath, and mentions Ty being pregnant and congratulates them. And Guevara isn't falling for his ploy, says he has his own family, and tells Callis to get lost.
So I guess continuing the tease of whether Sammy joins Callis or something else.
Adam Cole comes out and he calls All In the greatest pro wrestling show of all time. Thanks everyone that watched. It was the greatest night of my life. And says, next time I'll win.
Next time.
Yeah, next time. MJF is banged up with a bad neck, but he'll be ready to go on Sunday. So something tells me MJF is not going to be at 100% on Sunday, and this could let down.
He might have the collar.
Maybe he needs a neck collar. Well, then we hear, Adam! Out comes Roderick Strong with the Kingdom. And this was great. You care more about MJF's neck than mine. Great line. Adam Cole says, I'm sick of this. This is not the guy I've been friends with for over 10 years. So Mike Bennett takes the mic, and when he's referred to as, you're just hanging out with these guys, and Bennett says, these guys, and he goes and brings up their history. Going back to 2010, when they had a match at the ECW arena and got themselves signed and thought we had bonded for life. Cole, you were at my wedding. You hosted my bachelor party. We've wrestled everywhere, from the Cebu Dome to the Ted Reeve Arena and the Field House here in Chicago, which is the worst city to perform in. And my goodness, the Ted Reeve Arena.
Amazing. Did not expect that to ever get a shout out on national TV.
No. This the Ted Reeve Arena is, I mean, it was a literal dump in 2009 during a garbage strike when Ring of Honor had to run a show there. It was it's a house league hockey arena that Ring of Honor called home for many years.
Maybe the Harpos of Toronto.
Yeah, that's probably a good comparison. Taven calls him a leech who ignores all the people from his past, only cares about himself. And Cole apologizes if he made them feel that way. He was once close with them, but a part of friendship is understanding each other, and says MJF is not just one of my best friends. He is my best friend. Strong cannot accept that. He says, I'm entering the Grand Slam tournament and I'm going to beat MJF like you couldn't and become the new champion. Cole calls this a horrible idea with your bad neck. Strong says, I don't need a roll up, a ring, or even a good neck to win decisively. I'm breaking everyone's back to win that tournament because I'm a wrestling legend. Roderick Strong has just come into his own in this role. And by the end of this, listen, I don't think it's the most blockbuster match, but I was like, at least you have something built up here, this tag match, that you could do this ROH tag title match. But that, unless we are getting some surprise in this battle royal, does not appear to be the match.
That is not the match, I can confirm.
Okay.
After reading spoilers.
All right. Can we share like the winners? Is this going to ruin Rampage for people, really?
Sure. Okay. Skip ahead 30 seconds. Dark Order.
So there was a Penta promo afterward. And he refers to Jon Mox. Jon Mox, you hurt my brother. And he's coming for him. And he's coming for a singles title. And Alex Abrahantes says he was scouting Moxley while he was in Commander's corner. And Penta's going to make Moxley bleed like he's never bled before. I thought this was a strong enough promo. I really thought that they were going to go like the time limit here, and this was going to end up being a 3-way for the pay-per-view. They went really strong with Penta here, but they ended up going with a decisive winner.
I think you needed to, just so that, Orange winning wasn't so telegraphed.
Chris Statlander, Dr. Britt Baker, and Hikaru Shida against Nyla Rose, Marina Shafir, and Amy Sakura. So, as John Cena noted, this is Amy Sakura's first Dynamite match since December of 2019.
Pretty amazing. Wow.
That's wild.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think they'll ever.
They saw the tweets after Queen played on Sunday.
I don't know if they'll ever do anything with her. But she really has earned, I think, even this sort of spotlight. I already feel like she's probably outperformed what they originally intended for her. And if she continues, like, she's been really strong. And if she continues, maybe eventually she'll even get more than just this.
So the 6-woman tag, it featured Rose kicking Baker from the apron, and they had the heat on Baker for a long time. They went through a picture-in-picture break, and then Shida comes in, lands a question mark kick onto Amy Sakura, and Baker accidentally nails Shida. And this is the second time this has happened. Shida goes to the floor, and there's a choke slam to Britt Baker from Nyla Rose. Everyone is on the floor, and Chris Statlander hits a high cross after climbing to the top, and then wins with the Wednesday Night Fever to Marina Shafir in 7 minutes and 17 seconds. Baker is trying to explain what happened with Shida, who's looking rather annoyed, and then Ruby Soho jumps Chris Statlander in the ring, hitting No Future, grabs the TBS title and leaves the ring with it, and the announcers are saying she's stealing the title, and then Ruby Soho just places it down on the ramp and leaves with it, realizes that's too far. I can't steal this belt.
She wanted to threaten the theft.
So she leaves it on the ramp, and that was that. So the big match coming out of this is Britt Baker and Hikaru Shida, which is at this legendary somewhere down the road.
Oh, come on, John. You have to, put in teases for your future storylines. And obviously this was to do their best to heat up Statlander for the Ruby Soho match coming up on Sunday. I don't know why we don't see these sort of like multi-women matches more often involving the TNT champion, as well as like people that I guess are sort of seen more so on the world championship side of things. It feels like for the longest time, especially when Jade was active, the TNT division was almost its own thing, sequestered entirely from the world championship division. So it was nice to see Statlander. What?
I was just saying it was, yeah.
Yeah. So it was nice to see Statlander here get in the mix with the Shida and Baker, and it seems like they're continuing that trios, to tell further stories with everybody involved. So it allows easy transition between, the two championships for other people to challenge the champions. And I thought it was really nice that Amy Sakura, Marina Shafir, Nyla Rose, people you don't typically see on Dynamite got this sort of airtime tonight.
They made the announcement that Samoa Joe will defend the ROH Television Championship against Shane Taylor at All Out in Chicago on Sunday. And we got a promo from Taylor. Don Callis, this was great. Don Callis had secured all of Kenny Omega's x-rays and went over all of his injuries with Konosuke Takeshita while violating, I think, all HIPAA protocols in the process on national television. He has devised a game plan to attack his neck, then shows him the hernia injury that he had. So he targets the abdominal cavity by using the blue thunder bomb and telling him over and over, the right side, onto the right side. And if all else fails, we've got the screwdriver. This was great. It was 30 seconds and it outlined the whole story of the match. This guy has all these pre-existing injuries. Don Callis knows all of these weaknesses. And we attached the guy's moves that target these injuries. I thought this was a really well thought of segment. And this was 60 seconds tops. And I think it was one of the best things on the show.
But it took clearly a lot of pre-planning and a lot of pre-production, because Callis was really good with this touchscreen thing. They found some great clips and got all those x-rays, and he just felt so seamless with it. I got this, tap the screen, and then here's this, tap the screen, here's my next line. It all went really, really smoothly, as if he was, conducting some sort of weather report. Very impressive.
The Acclaimed come out, and Max does a rap that they do more numbers than math class. They never froze like Mitch McConnell, and looking pissed like Trump in his mugshot. And Daddy Ass was in this pink outfit that Taz just had no words to describe. And Daddy Ass says that they are short on time, which if they were, this went very lengthy. And he says that Daddy Ass is back. He was only gone for one day. Max calls them the Miracle Menage. And last year, Chicago lifted the Acclaimed and moved them to the next level. And we're going to lift these titles up with pride and dominate the trios division. And they're having a ribbon cutting ceremony. So they pull out scissors, which allows Billy to state, "You have a little one. What if we use my big one?" As he pulls out the large set of scissors and cuts the ribbon. And Bowens welcomes us to the House of Ass and says that these belts are kind of dull. So they unveil new pink titles that the strap in the back, scissors to lock the strap in the back. And they will make a ton of money off of these belts. And this segment at the end, the Acclaimed announced that they will defend their trios titles on Collision.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know what to say, John. You're kind of leaving this empty space for me to criticize, but I mean, they also just have all these other shows that they have to have big things for. Somebody would be complaining that there'd be no reason to watch Collision if they didn't have something like this.
Is this a reason to watch Collision?
Maybe for some people, at least it's giving them something. Would it have been a reason to watch All Out?
I would more so look at, you have 2 hours to sell this pay-per-view, and we had multiple segments that were very long.
They have a lot of shows that they have to build. Beyond All Out.
This week, your focus is a $50 pay-per-view on Sunday. I would say that would be my focus for everything.
So just give up on Collision.
You're not giving up on Collision, but you're not telling me you need 10 minutes to dedicate to an Acclaimed segment or a tag match. We didn't even have opponents announced for this tag match at the end.
This wasn't just to dedicate to the tag, to the Acclaimed match on Collision. It was just to give a segment for the Acclaimed.
All right, they got a segment for the Acclaimed. We had promos for all the teams in the Battle Royal, and we've got the Tag Team Battle Royal, and then Hangman Page against Brian Keith on Rampage. So probably be a hell of a match, to be honest. Brian Keith.
I guess that's all they needed for Collision, really.
That's all they needed. Rampage.
Oh,
Collision,
Rampage,
on the other hand, has the Outcasts, all three of them, against Chris Statlander, Hikaru Shida, and Britt Baker, Dax Harwood against Jay White, and the Acclaimed against Matt Menard, Angelo Parker, and Daniel Garcia for the Trios titles.
Mm-hmm.
Orange Cassidy against Penta for the International Championship. Excalibur says if you look really closely, you can see the stab wounds on Orange Cassidy's head from Moxley's fork. So they go through the break. Penta hits a super kick on the floor, lands a tope con hero, and Tony thinks he landed on Orange Cassidy's bad right hand with the dive. And then we have Cassidy come back with a stun dog, satellite DDT, and then they go through a second commercial break, and Penta's trying to snap the arm. Cassidy fights it, and he comes back with these weak slaps that have nothing behind them. And then they go back and forth trading destroyers, with Cassidy hitting 2 of them, and the crowd got into these the sequence of destroyers. And then an orange punch misses, allowing Penta to hit Made in Japan. Cassidy kicks out, and then he goes for the orange punch, which is stopped when Penta super kicks the hand. And they move on to the edge of the apron where Penta hits a Fear Factor. Orange grabs the rope, breaking the count. And then after Penta snaps the right arm, he hits the Fear Factor. And this crowd, they were prepared, like maybe this is it. But Cassidy kicks out and catches Penta with a crucifix in 16 minutes and 55 seconds to retain the International Championship, setting up Orange Cassidy and Jon Moxley for Sunday.
I thought this was a really good match. Really, really strong main event, as most Orange Cassidy title defenses tend to be at this stage of the run, and Penta building the entire match around the arm break. I thought this was probably the most meaningful arm break spot that Penta has probably done in AEW, to the point where like I was able to at least suspend my disbelief a little bit to think that he could have possibly gotten some sort of weird like shock victory.
I thought it was brilliant because on this show, like here, he snaps the arm, and how did Moxley win his match that we just saw an hour and a half ago? Like with the arm bar. Like you have this perfect like device for the pay-per-view. Like he's coming in with this injured arm, and here's this guy that has his death jiu-jitsu that can target the arm, can target the hand. I thought they did an excellent job building this up for Sunday. This feels like this could be the main event of the show from in my opinion.
I think it probably will be.
I don't think that's the worst. Like of what you've got, like you've got to work with what you have.
I think it's very likely Orange loses the championship. And if that's the case, I mean, this international title run has been built up so well. A lot of people feeling it's the best title run in North American professional wrestling right now. And due to extenuating circumstances, if you have to shove anything up into the main event, it would certainly be this.
So Orange Cassidy sits down on a chair. He says he doesn't usually talk. He is so tired. His body hurts. And every time he fights, his backpack gets a bit heavier, but he's here. He's wrestling. He's defending the international title, which means everything to him. This is what AEW means as he holds the title out. And he was told he'll never do anything. You're too skinny. You're too short. You're too different. He's the champion, and he's going to continue to defend it for as long as he wants. And there's nothing anyone can do to take it from him. And he addresses Jon Moxley and says, you better bring more than just a fork, because I will always be the international champion. I am freshly squeezed Orange Cassidy, and I don't have a catchphrase. And with that, Moxley walks down, and they go nose to nose. They trade strikes, and that's how the show ends. And I would say the last 20 minutes of the show salvaged it for me, because I was very down on this episode of Dynamite.
It was a Dynamite very much lacking in star power. Tony Khan did tweet earlier before the show went on that, what does he say here?
There were some minor illnesses attached, as well as the hurricane in Florida.
Due to minor illnesses, the big talent traveling this week and Hurricane Idalia affecting flights, I've changed some plans for Collision tonight. So who knows what the reason was, but this was certainly a Dynamite that felt like it was very much lacking in star power. You did not have any members of the Elite, obviously no MJF, obviously no CM Punk. CM Punk wasn't going to be attached to this anyway. But beyond that, I don't think they had much direction for the big programs. I mean, MJF, is in a tag team program. He's not defending the titles at All Out. No word on it. I guess the Bucks have a multi-man match that they built up, Kenny versus Takeshita. but it certainly didn't feel like a go home show, and clearly they were handicapped.
Well, this is the card for All Out. So we have Luchasaurus against Darby Allin for the TNT title, Miro against Powerhouse Hobbs, Chris Statlander against Ruby Soho for the TBS title, Orange Cassidy against Jon Moxley for the international title, Kenny Omega against Konosuke Takeshita, Bullet Club Gold against FTR and the Young Bucks in an 8-man tag, Adam Cole and MJF defending against the Dark Order for the ROH tag titles, Samoa Joe against Shane Taylor for the ROH television title, and Eddie Kingston and Katsuyori Shibata against Claudio Castagnoli and Wheeler Yuta. Again, I look on paper.
And just to add to that, Tony Khan announced that on Collision, Ricky Starks will appear live to challenge Ricky the Dragon Steamboat to a strap match at All Out. So,
oh, okay. Well, that's certainly going to the well to do something outside of the box, to do a match with Ricky Steamboat for the pay-per-view.
Yeah, it's rare that they're so specific about, like, this person challenging this other person to a specific type of match. So we have seen, what is it?
They're basically telling you that match is happening at the pay-per-view. I mean,
well, I was going to say, we have seen, like, Jack Perry call out Jerry Lynn, and they teased that for a whole week, and it turns out Jerry Lynn was, saving up for, like, the RVD challenge. This could be that, but with such a short amount of time, this very likely could just be Ricky Steamboat coming in, and essentially it's filling in for CM Punk.
Yeah, and if they have any hope of salvaging something, like, it's always Punk can come to Steamboat's aid, and you set that up. But I think people's expectation of that is probably pretty low at this point. Nor do I think, like, a Punk and Ricky Starks match takes this pay-per-view and suddenly it's like, I see this being a real challenge for, like, we're going to learn something on Sunday. Like, if this does a remarkably, like, I would say if this does 110,000 buys or over, I would say, listen, this is an audience that it was like, you have a really solid foundation when it comes to running a pay-per-view, because this is the first AEW pay-per-view I can feel that does not have a big feel attached to it. Like, there's some very good matches. I don't doubt it'll be a very good wrestling show. But it's the least important pay-per-view I feel AEW has promoted.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think having Punk in Chicago headlining basically would have added, a good deal. But I don't know if, like, even the Starks match feels like so big, compared to maybe an edition of Collision, for instance. But it would have added something. Still, you have everybody like who's a star on your roster wrestling on the show at this point, but some of them are tag matches. I mean, you've got Cole and MJF teaming up for their first tag title defense. The Bucks and FTR teaming up in a multi-person match. But those could turn out well, Hobbs and Miro have had a good amount of TV time. Kenny versus Takeshita has had a good amount of TV time. I'm sure that'll be very good as well. So I think there's enough here for your diehards to still be interested.
You got a lot of great, like, supporting matches. I just think this show, it lacks a big main event.
Yeah, I would put a lot of push behind, well, if they had the time, behind Orange Cassidy and Jon Moxley. I mean, it really pushed this as the potential end of Orange Cassidy's title run. I think that in and of itself,
or it's his biggest win. I mean, I don't know how quick I would be to end this run. Like, it certainly, this is a level of opponent that if you were going to end it, Moxley is more than
and tonight's promo felt like a goodbye promo to me.
Yeah, I'm really intrigued by that match. I think, like, of this lineup here, I think you could very much justify that closing the show. Like, what would you say, that and maybe Omega Takeshita? Like, there isn't the clear, obvious choice to end the show.
Yeah, it certainly wouldn't be Cole.
I'd end with the title match. I mean, listen, you're in this position, you don't have this Punk title match most likely, and let's end with a title match, and it tells you the international title is that's what we're going to go with. We have a bunch of feedback, so if you want to send in any super chats, you're welcome to do so, and we will head on over to the forum.
We got one here from Jake Olinar, who sends $5. Thank you for the support, Jake. In the Windy City, he says, we do have the true main event on Sunday, and that is Toshiaki Kawada at StarCast and Eddie Kingston being a kid in a candy store interviewing him. Interesting. Is that happening at StarCast?
Yeah, that's
Another interview.
That's one of the panels that they are doing at StarCast, which begins Friday.
That's pretty cool.
Saeed writes, simple and effective promo by Orange makes me look forward to the match even more. Are we building Sammy and Jericho for Full Gear, or do you imagine it will be blown off on a Dynamite? Fun matches tonight, but match of the night will have to be Orange Cassidy and Penta. For Dynamite standards, I feel like this wasn't a strong one, especially leading into another pay-per-view. Collision is looking to be a great card. Any early thoughts on what the main event could be for All Out? Any early thoughts on what could be the main event for All Out?
We just said.
Yeah. I mean, we don't really have early thoughts. Like the show's in a couple of days. I don't know. Shout out to the women at the volleyball game in Nebraska, drawing 92,003 fans in attendance, an all-time record for a women's sporting event.
All right, let's go to up next. Who do we have? We have Mark, who says, given the apparent COVID wave that has crashed down upon the locker room who traveled to All In, we're not reporting that. I've not heard that. I don't know anything about that. Combined with the Punk Perry controversy and travel issues this week, I'd say the show managed to be a solid episode. All Out definitely reads on paper like a mixed bag, but I have no doubt that it will deliver in ring. Moxley and Orange Cassidy as a main event could definitely work as a top match, a match between two of the company's absolute MVPs who can always be entrusted with delivering. I think if that is the main event for All Out, it will not disappoint. Could be the biggest match of Orange Cassidy's career. I enjoyed a lot on the card tonight. A huge fan of the random women's trios match. I missed those early days of AEW women's multi-person or triple trios matches. It's something they should do more of. Jericho's reaction to the crowd really makes me realize how much of a bubble Twitter is, as Chicago seemed very into him. And on top of that, in general, given the online discourse surrounding Punk and Perry, it did not feel at all like the crowd in Chicago wasn't happy with what they were getting or ever trying to hijack the show. I think they're just as frustrated with Punk's storm cloud and just want to enjoy a product that holds Chicago in high regard, regardless if Punk is part of it or not.
All right, let's continue on here. We will go to Alex, who says that COVID waves are definitely returning and wrestling isn't immune. Orange Cassidy main event was great with a good destroyer spot, amazing promo, 2 main event level matches with Orange Cassidy and Mox and Omega and Takeshita. Some odd choices like Shane Taylor, would have rather seen Athena. I mean, Athena's on anyway. Despite everything, All Out is shaping up to be decent enough to garner some interest, which seemed impossible 24 hours ago.
And we go to Andrew from Cape Breton, who says, a few months ago when I did my Rewind-A-Way episode, I talked about how impressed I was with Mike Bennett. Since then, Mike has gone through with the ringer career-wise, and a career-killing gimmick as the Cuck being the most notable thing he's done. Put him in a team with the worst ROH champion ever, and you have a team that has been behind the 8-ball for a long time. But tonight, I thought they really showed up, Bennett in particular. I'm really liking this trio with Roderick Strong, and Roddy has really been a highlight throughout the week. I like the show, but I'm a bit disappointed with the All Out card. I feel this could end up being one of the worst drawing pay-per-views since they started. I like the Cole and MJF team, but it feels like both could be doing something different. I know it won't happen, but I think they would drive immediate interest in the show. If Punk versus Perry can somehow yeah, that's not happening.
No, and nor do I feel it would be some big deal either. I think that's really like being in the. I don't think people are buying a pay-per-view for a match like that. I think that's really reading the situation as like being bigger than it is.
And what kind of message does it send to your locker room?
Just for a whole host of reasons. I mean, it's not. Yeah, I don't think that'd be a good idea for many reasons. Okay, we go to Joe. Did you guys think that parts of Moxley and Cassidy's promos tonight were shots at CM Punk? I could imagine you not as much, no. And
like what? I don't know. Anything could be a shot at somebody, and I didn't look at anything. Nothing stood out to me.
I would imagine their match would be the main event at All Out. It's great to see Cassidy in a featured match. I see no doubt that the two will rock the United Center. And shout out to my fellow Clevelander, Shane Taylor, receiving an ROH title match against Samoa Joe. Finally, on the Punk front, do you think whoever is talking to the wrestling media besides Tony Khan may be exaggerating some of the backstage stories because they don't want Punk in AEW? I guess the Perry incident was bad enough to warrant suspensions. Do you guys think it would be better off to just release Punk now, take the hit, and repackage Collision if you must? Okay, there's like 5,000 questions in here. Thank you, Joe. You're asking us to like get into the heads of motives of different people. That is impossible to do. Could you rebuild Collision without Punk over time? Yes, you could. but at this point, he is the biggest star. You could argue on either show, but especially on Saturday night. It's very important that they have enough to draw on a Saturday night. I think if Punk is not there on this Saturday night, you'll see that impact because it's the double whammy of no Punk and you're up against a WWE show. So you'll see the immediate effect on Saturday.
Yeah. I mean, we don't know how long this suspension is, but they might be forced to do just that, if it's anything longer than just a week. So we'll see. David from Israel says, I buy every AEW pay-per-view, and I think I'm skipping this one, unfortunately. The card just isn't really exciting for me, and a lot of the matches there wouldn't even be super appealing to me on a Dynamite. And having to spend full price for a card this week, marquee-wise, a week after spending full price on All In, just isn't worth it. I know a lot of people will blame Punk and Perry for the show possibly tanking buys wise, but I don't think Punk and Starks 3 is the difference between this pay-per-view card feeling strong or weak. I'm sure the wrestling will end up being great and the show will be a thumbs up show, and I like supporting AEW and stay up at crazy hours due to the time difference to watch the shows, but I don't think I can justify paying full price for a show like this after just spending it on All In.
I'd agree in the sense that I don't think the CM Punk involvement here would be changing people's thoughts. Like, you still had 1 week to build this up, and the Punk Starks feud is certainly, that's not a cold match. They've been building it all summer. But I still think like this experiment of trying to run a week apart, it certainly doesn't feel like you have created that buzz and momentum. But we are all going into this blind because we don't know what the end result is going to be. And ultimately, if this show does really well, then we have to look at this as this worked. And this is an audience that, whether it is just brand loyalty or match quality, means a whole of a hell lot more than building up long programs for payoffs. We're going to learn something based on this number. I'm very intrigued to see it. And if it does really well, then I would have to stand here.
So what's your bar for really well?
As I said earlier, I would say if this one to me does over 110, I'd be really happy with that figure coming 1 week after that show at All In. And the fact that people are spending the same amount 1 week later for a card that I didn't feel a whole lot of buzz for, I would say like 110 and above would be, even though people will look at that as a disappointing number, I don't when you're talking about 1 week apart from pay-per-views.
Do we have what does a 110 put it at, compared to their history?
It would be outperforming some of the earlier shows, but definitely below the bar that they've been doing, I'll say, in the post CM Punk era.
And just for comparison's sake, like, what does an ROH show do typically?
ROH is not doing 110.
Yeah, like what does it do?
I don't know what I don't know off the top of my head what the super card show did.
Right. Because just, that's just even another level of like depth, of fandom that, like oftentimes I guess we go into those shows very similarly, not knowing what the card is until, like a Friday, or like whatever, 2 days beforehand. And you at least have a certain segment of a hardcore fan base to rely on. But is that going to be the case? Are they at least 100,000 people? Ben sends a super chat. He says, will Tony Khan pay for Alan Parsons' project for Ricky Steamboat?
Oh, man.
My
hunch would say yes.
Yeah.
Cody from Maine, recapping the pay-per-view that just happened, promoting the next one that's just 4 days away, and starting to build for Grand Slam all on the same show. I mean, the build for Grand Slam was limited to what, like a line from MJF. What a bizarre but enjoyable edition of Dynamite, highlighted for me by Orange Cassidy's performance and the Roderick Strong segment. I call it that because Roddy stole the show. He has been so good in this role. The all-out card as it stands does have my intrigue, especially with the addition of the international title. But man, another $50 for a lesser card than we got this past weekend is tough. It's not that bad when there were only 4 to 5 pay-per-views a year, but given that they're keeping the schedule for next year, I really hope All Out is part of a subscription on Max, as you've discussed as a possibility, or at least discounted at around $30 to $35. Ordering the pay-per-view will probably be a day of decision.
Mr. Kane says, overall, I thought tonight was an easy watch for Dynamite. Light on the action, but decent with the promo segments. Besides, the action was enjoyable. I'm sure the live crowd is getting more. Toni Storm is a treasure. I'm looking forward to seeing how she and the Outcast continue to crumble. Takeshita will finally destroy Omega and completely be lost to the dark side. Mox versus Orange Cassidy will be brutally great. These two consistently deliver, and I think they'll do it again in the clutch. I really enjoyed seeing the Kingdom in the mix with the Cole and MJF story. I remember meeting Matt Taven at the Crash in Tijuana, Mexico, and congratulating him on the Wembley announcement, and that I looked forward to seeing him there. He appreciated it, but he had his doubts whether he'd be booked. Glad to see it turned out okay.
And the last one comes from Jordan in the Bronx. It seems like many outside factors, not counting the Punk issues, hampered tonight's show. It wasn't the most stellar Dynamite, but it did a lot to set up some direction for the next month. Orange Cassidy was a star among stars tonight. He's on my short list for Wrestler of the Year. I like Shane Taylor getting a pay-per-view match, but the AEW audience has never seen him wrestle on TV. A match with Joe feels like it's pulled from a hat. Meanwhile, someone like Athena still has virtually no presence on AEW TV or pay-per-view at all. And that's a shame. I would also have loved to have seen Ricky Starks or Andrade get on the pay-per-view since they weren't at all in. Maybe there's more set up on Collision for them. Well, Ricky Starks, there definitely will be.
Mm.
All right. Well, there you go. Thank you, everybody, for the feedback coming out of tonight's divisive edition of Dynamite. But we will be back on Thursday. We've got the Ask Away mailbag show coming your way as we will be going through all of your questions. And on Friday night, we will be chatting all about SmackDown and everyone reacting to the Battle Royal and Hangman Page versus Brian Keith.
Yes, that is correct. Yeah, that Battle Royal. Yeah.
Yes. And then double pay-per-view. What do you think is what's the pay-per-view you're more intrigued by this weekend?
So what's Payback? What's on Payback again? Seth
Rollins
versus Nakamura
and the cage match.
They're both like, I mean, that's a pretty weak WWE pay-per-view show as well. So I can't really say I'm so terribly excited for it. I mean, based on I think like standard of quality, I don't know. I would say they're both pretty equal, honestly.
I think All Out's going to be a really good show. Just looking at the lineup, like it would. I still think it's going to be a really good show, but I can't say I'm feeling either one here on this Wednesday. Like they feel like these are our pay-per-view commitments for the weekend. All right. Your commitment will be to join us for all of our shows in the coming days, and we will be signing off. So go keep it locked to postwrestling.com and roll the credits way.